Hi, friends. I'm Scott Giles, a consulting hypnotist and a life coach, and welcome to Saturday at 2:30. Because every Saturday at 2:30 Central Time, I do a short video podcast here on Facebook Live and on YouTube about some topic related to life coaching or to the hypnotic arts and sciences. Today, I want to talk about the narcissistic personality disorder. It's fairly common. And as we go through life, we are going to encounter people who have this problem. According to Psychology Today, about 6.5% of the American population actually has this disorder. Now, there are different descriptions of what the narcissistic personality is like, and some particular systems of psychopathology have very individual and idiosyncratic definitions of narcissism, but the most common that you'll find will come from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of the American Psychiatric Association. And I'm just going to quote from the website of the Mayo Institute. The narcissistic personality disorder is one of several types of personality disorders. It is a mental condition in which people have an inflated sense of their own importance, a deep need for excessive attention and admiration, troubled relationships, and a lack of empathy for others. But behind this mask of extreme confidence lies a fragile self-esteem that's vulnerable to the slightest criticism. That's, I think, a good working definition of the narcissistic disorder. Now, the first thing I want to get across is that not all narcissism is bad. We have to have some degree of narcissism in our personality makeup. Otherwise, we would lack self-esteem. We would not pursue our own goals or our healthy self-interest. We would allow others to dominate us. The difference between a healthy degree of narcissism and the disorder is one of degree, but it's a one of vast degree. Now, I had studied this academically while I was in grad school, of course, but it really got pushed home to me when I had a client who had a severe narcissistic personality disorder. And when you encounter such a person, it stands out like a flare. This individual showed up for his session an hour and a half late. He showed up, said hi to me, and I began to say, well, let's get you rescheduled here because I'm booked stem to stern and there's no way I'm going to be able to see you today. But before I even got that out, he said, I need to hit the bathroom. And he spent 20 minutes in the client bathroom. And then when he came out, he walked into my office and there was another client there already and said, well, I'm all yours now. And he fully expected that I would eject the client who was there and give him his full hour-long session, which at this point was almost 2 hours overtime. And when I said I couldn't possibly do this, he flew into a rage, threatened me, proceeded to demean me and insult me, at which point I had to ask him to leave. And when he said that he wouldn't unless he got his full session, I had to threaten a more aggressive ejection. This was a very, very disturbing incident in my career, but the fact that he saw nothing wrong with his behavior, that's the extreme narcissist. Now, that is an extreme case, but you're going to encounter people like that or with less extreme cases, and you need to be watching out for them. A person who suffers from this personality style disorder will often gaslight. That is, they will try to make you doubt your own understanding of reality. Oh no, the appointment was scheduled for right now. You just got it wrong on your calendar. A complete lack of empathy. Well, why can't you change your schedule around to accommodate me? Highly manipulative. Well, if you don't do what I want, I'm going to go onto Yelp, but I'm going to leave a review that every one of your clients is going to see. resilient to being called to task for it. And when you do identify that they're being unreasonable, you typically will elicit a narcissistic rage, like the threat to actually become physically violent. They tend to be very grandiose. They live in a fantasy world of their own creation, and they only pay attention to those things that support their own narrative. They need constant praise and affirmation. Very entitled to whatever they want. Exploitative. They're quite willing to take advantage. They demean, they belittle, they intimidate, they humiliate, and typically often will have mood issues and a history of very troubled relationships. People who have this disorder suffer a great deal, and that's something I do want to get across. While they're exhausting and challenging to deal with, they in fact are in extreme pain themselves, and they don't know what to do to get out of pain. More men than women have this disorder. Tends to be seen early in childhood or young adulthood, but sometimes people will grow out of it. As for the causes of a person coming down with narcissism, there's no real agreement. There's some sense in the literature that a mismatch in parenting, that's parents who are either totally overprotective and affirming, can create a predisposition to narcissism, or who are excessively critical. And the narcissism is developed by the child as a defense against the ongoing criticism of the parents. There is some evidence that narcissism may be genetic. Identical twins raised apart tend to be prone to the disorder. And neurobiology, there's some belief that there are certain kinds of brain chemistry tend to predispose to this disorder. And while psychotherapy tends to be the usual treatment, some medicines do seem to help. Now, a percentage of people who have the narcissistic personality disorder have what is coming to be called the malignant narcissistic personality disorder, first described by Erich Fromm, a great psychoanalyst. Now, this is an experimental diagnosis right now in the mental health world, but it includes everything I mentioned about narcissism plus sociopathy. That is, the malignant narcissist is not only a narcissist, but they're a sociopath. Now, a lot of people don't understand what a sociopath is or how a sociopath differs from a psychopath. Now, the first thing to get is that neither sociopathy or psychopathy are actually official diagnostic categories. They're used informally to explain a certain kind of attitude that some people bring to their life. A person who is a sociopath will utterly manipulate and be perfectly willing to deceive another person, but they do have something of a conscience about it. They may feel bad, but they're still going to deceive the other person. The psychopath has no conscience. They will deceive and see nothing wrong with it and take no responsibility for it. So it's a matter of intent and emphasis. They may behave the same way. The sociopath tends to be able to form some attachments, so they may have a family or a significant other or a political party or what have you, whereas the psychopath tends to be very much a loner and can't form relationships with others. And there's another type of narcissistic disorder that appears in the literature, and this is something I've spent a lot of time thinking about. It comes out of the work of the late psychiatrist M. Scott Peck. A lot of you may know his book, The Road Less Traveled, which was popular some years ago. His second book was called The People of the Lie, where he argued that there is a kind of personality that is simply evil, and he used that term. And the description of the evil personality type is the narcissistic destructive type. This is a person who, whenever faced with a choice, always chooses the option which injures the greatest number of people, even if it's not in their self-interest to do so. They will always choose to do evil. Now, it's a dangerous definition. It's very easy to start accusing other people of this simply if you don't agree with them. But as I look back over my life, I believe I may have encountered two people who meet this criteria. One of them was actually a ministerial colleague, and you could actually observe their behavior and predict with high degree of accuracy what they were going to do on the basis of what would hurt the most people. So when you encounter someone like this, you just need to protect yourself as best you can. So that's narcissism. Now, if you think you suffer from the narcissistic disorder to any degree, get help. And when you enter into a therapeutic relationship to help work with this, understand it's not going to be a quick fix. You have to build a rapport and a trust with your therapist that's going to last a long time. And by that, I mean years and maybe decades. It's going to take that degree of getting to know someone else and learning to trust them that they can call you on your behavior without you exploding. So that's what you're in for. But seriously, it's worth the journey. If you have this problem, you are going to be miserable in your life. And the only way out of that misery is going to be to get that help and to pay the cost for it. If you are an individual in a relationship with someone who has this problem, here are some things that might help. First, have a realistic expectation of what is possible in a relationship with a narcissist. You're never going to have an evenly matched, reciprocal, mutually advantageous relationship. They're always going to strive to be one up. So expect that and build that into your goals and understanding of the relationship. Pull back on the narcissistic supply. That is, don't provide the unquestioning admiration and reinforcement that's constantly being demanded. You can do some of it if you think it's authentic, that they really have done a good job. But don't give in to the demand for the constant flow of affirmation. And very likely they're going to go away when this happens. So cut off the narcissistic supply. Disengage to the degree that you can to avoid being manipulated and taken advantage of yourself. Never argue with the narcissist. There's no point because they're not listening to you. They're waiting for you to stop talking so they can start, but the argument just isn't going to be taken seriously. And set limits and boundaries with these people. Now, never, ever set a boundary you do not keep. Because the first time you set a boundary and then you allow someone to step over that boundary, they will find a way to use that to reel you right back into a manipulative and exploitive relationship. And they're masters at it. They've been practicing since they were young children. So if you set a boundary, you keep a boundary. And if you ever vary, you're not going to have an effective relationship with that person. Now, why would you want to? Well, that person may be your supervisor, may be a professor, and you're just going to have to find a way to maneuver in that relationship because you can't conveniently get out of it. And these rules will be helpful for you. Be realistic in what you expect. Limit the narcissistic supply. Disengage. Don't argue. Set boundaries and mean them. It's the best thing you can do. So that is the narcissistic personality disorder and what I've learned about it over the years. And I do want to reinforce the one thing I said. These people are worthy of pity. They are in a world of hurt. They don't show it. And it doesn't affect their behavior. But they're actually frightened and in a great deal of pain. So they may have no empathy, but you have some. But still, always protect yourself. Thank you very much for your attention. I will be back Saturday at 2:30 next week with another topic and another discussion. I hope you'll join me. As always, if I can be of help to you, please feel free to reach out through my website or the messenger or email. When I edit this video for my YouTube channel, I'll put my website and my Patreon channel up as cards so you can take a look at what those are like. And thank you. Please like and subscribe and share, and stay well.